We are approaching final session of the day. We are diving now into the future of alternative proteins, again about proteins. Embracing hybrid solutions. It's a topic of the final panel session, and of course for that we will need our panelists, so please give them a warm welcome. Sneha Srikrishnan, Senior Director Business Development Ginkgo Bioworks. Katharina Burdorf, Team Lead Product Management PhD candidate at University of Vechta. Milligan, Founder and CEO Extracellular. And Michrowski, CEO, Co-founder ProFuse Technology. And of course our panel discussion moderator, Heather Courtney, General Partner Alwyn Capital. Hello.
Good afternoon. Come on, guys. A little more energy. Good afternoon. Okay, I'll take it. We're here to talk about hybrid technologies. So probably most people in this room are pretty familiar with the cultivated meat industry. But I have an esteemed panel here of experts in the space, ranging from folks that work, boots on the ground in the industry, all the way up to larger players in the food space. And so I will give the opportunity to start with Sneha and kind of do a little introduction across the panel. And we're going to have to share microphones. Yeah.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for staying back for the last session of the afternoon. I'm from Ginkgo Bioworks, and we represent R&D services for precision fermented ingredients, so different type of alternative protein. And I am a part of the protein team. I basically sell services and develop services that create the right product market fit for consumers. So that's us using synthetic biology.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katharina, and I'm from Hydrosol. We do stabilizing and texturing systems for the food industry for various applications. And we support also the new cell egg industry regarding application development, for example, of hybrid products containing cultivated cells. And I'm also currently finalizing my PhD with a focus on consumer acceptance and perceptions of cultured meat. So, yep, happy to be here.
Hi, my name's Will. I'm the founder and CEO of Extracellular, and we are a CDMO for Sustainable Biotech, a contract development and manufacturing organization. And we help a large number of cultivated meat companies and other cell-based companies develop their manufacturing processes and scale. So we support a range of companies in the alternative protein and cultivated meat space.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michrowski. I'm a co-founder and CEO of ProFuse Technology. We are the muscle experts, and we use technology that optimizes the growth of muscle tissue. We provide cultivated meat companies with media supplements and cell lines that help them reduce the cost and improve the quality of muscle. We just got an EAC grant of 2.4 million euros to upscale our technology, and we're excited.
So to start off this conversation, I thought it was kind of important for this room for us to establish two terms. And the first one is hybrid, obviously what we're going to be focusing on today, but the other one is blended. So for hybrid technologies, we're talking about plant-based components with cultivated cells. For blended technologies, we're talking about traditional meat taken from slaughter blended with plant-based. So blended and hybrid. And I think when we're talking about, speaking to consumers specifically, it's very important for us to get, at least within our industry, some clear definitions. And they're fairly technical. So when we actually come to market with these products, they may not be known as hybrid and blended. But we've seen this sort of like trajectory with the name cultivated. It was clean meat. It was humane meat. It was non-slaughtered meat. And we've ended up as an industry with the name cultivated. But when you're talking about actually marketing these products to consumers, we've discussed on our prep call a little bit about how a highly technical industry like this can communicate effectively with the end consumer. And you want to be transparent, but you also want to make sure that you speak about it in an appealing manner. So I kind of wanted to just start with, how can we use labeling and how can we actually communicate about this industry and about these products with the consumer? So who is really responsible for that, for consumer education? And how can we best go about that education? And so I just wanted to start the conversation there. And maybe Katharina, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of parties responsible for that because obviously it's a quite difficult topic. As we've seen, as an industry, we don't even agree on one term. We usually mix it up. So just today, a magazine out of the scene has been published talking about hybrid products where in some cases blended products have been meant. So and internally at Hydrosol, we say hybrid products, although according to the GFI definition, we would mean blended products. So you see, it's difficult if you, even as an industry, don't agree somehow to communicate then to the end consumer. This is why we also made our own definition for us, so that we said what is a hybrid or a blended product actually for us, and what must be the case. So we distinguish between enriched products and extended products, or enriched meat products and extended meat products. And I think that's also important then for the consumer education, because when we talk about enriched meat products, it's about blending meat, conventional meat, with vegetables, pulses, mushrooms, and so on. But to communicate the benefits that you get out of this. So this means calorie reduction, fat reduction, fiber enrichment, and so on. While extended meat products, this is something that exists in many markets, but you don't do this because of consumer benefits. You do this for price reasons. For example, extend meat with soy TVP, with bread, or something like that. And this is not obviously communicated to the consumer, which is quite tricky. So obviously, as an industry, we have also the challenge to educate the consumer because it's not really possible to stay up to date in this kind of fast-moving environment, even for us, and especially then as a consumer. And additionally, of course, the government can also support in this field, more or less working with the industry, so have kind of educational campaigns, you can say, to create awareness and familiarity, and in the end, knowledge, because this, in the end, the knowledge is necessary to gain acceptance, and otherwise, this is going to fail.
Sure, I'll just add a quick sentence to supplement what Katya just mentioned. I think it's on all of us to educate our consumer. There's the marketing aspect, there's the clarity of what we are selling to our consumers, be clear on the labels, work with regulatory to understand what the labeling requirements would need to be, and then develop the product with the end in sight. So I find that being an ingredient development company ourselves, a lot of companies have the vision that we want to make a lactoglobulin, an ovalbumin, a lactoferrin, for example. And then what? How are you going to actually package this? How is the consumer actually going to see this? Where is it going to be blended? What is going to be the final resultant product? It would be fantastic to start at the end, work with the EFSA, work with FDA, work with GRAS, the GFI, the consortia. And once we have a certain point of conviction that this is what we want to deliver into the market, work backwards to what the product definition would need to be in terms of development. I think that would be my add.
Okay, thank you. So before we actually get to speak to the consumer about this product, we have to get something to market. And that means that these companies need to produce a product that can be consumer facing. But before that happens, we need a lot of technology and a lot of research that's going into developing cell lines, media formulations, and scaffolding plant-based components that go into these products. So Will, you probably are the deepest in with multiple companies across the landscape. Do you want to tell us what the industry is actually working on right now?
Yeah, sure thing. So there's a lot of focus on scaling up their processes as efficiently as possible. And there's a lot of commonality in the technology that people are working on. Most companies that we support are focused on suspension-adapted cells that grow in aggregates, and specifically, we're pushing to try and get to 30, 50, 80 grams a liter of biomass in a bioreactor, which allows them to start producing batches of tens or hundreds of kilos in many cases. So we're starting to get to the point where we can produce meaningful quantities of cells to go into these products. And then what the companies do with it, quite often, the percentage of cell-based products versus plant-based, if they're developing a cultivated fat product, might be in the 5 to 15% total cell content. If they're producing muscle cells, then it might be closer to the 70% content. But there's always something else in there, so it's always typically a hybrid product. And then maybe the other thing to talk about is whether it's differentiated or just cell mass. So is it the final product that you're actually producing? And I think it's a stepwise progress. Companies are focused on generating quite a lot of biomass first, and where they're trying to bring specific cell types to market, like the fat cells, there has to be a differentiation step in there. But these are all part of the technology roadmap. No one really is talking anymore about bringing a whole cut product to market. I think people have properly parked that until we get these first generations of products to market.
Great. And we talk a lot about this in the cultivated market, right? You just said we're not seeing whole cut products anymore. Really, we're talking about something that's a hybrid of plant-based and cultivated cells. And that can be fat or muscle or anything in between. But I think that maybe to touch on why it's so important for the cultivated meat industry to have hybrids come to market first, and why this is such an important part of our industry trajectory. Guy, maybe I'll ask you, can you just talk a little bit about why this is so important for the industry as a whole?
Sure. Just following on what Will said, this is really where things are. The companies are at a very early stage of the technology, and the scales that we are looking at are very low scales. And the first products that were launched, in a sense, like in the US, you had two companies that got the regulation approval. You had Upside and you had Good Meat. And then you understand that their capability is to support one 3-star Michelin restaurant with 3 fillets of chicken. So that's not going to move the needle. And those companies actually stopped doing that. But with the financing environment changing rapidly since the end of 2022, the cultivated meat companies, even those that raised $400 million, $600 million, like Upside or Mosa Meat or other companies, supposedly they were supposed to build a factory with those funds. The technology is far from being there, so there's no factory to build. And they are under pressure to bring the first product to the market, a minimum viable product. And I think that's one of the things that Will was mentioning. What could be a good enough minimum viable product? And I think that's a big question and a big risk, and I think we have to differentiate between a product that has an element of fat versus a product that has an element of biomass, whether it is undifferentiated or differentiated muscle element. And the fat, in generally speaking, the fat technology is a bit more mature and more ready to scale. And then, for example, you take Believers, which is a Believers Meat. It's another company that raised $460 million. Their approach was to take fibroblasts, which are, like skin cells, and proliferate them and then differentiate them into fat. And they claim that even a very small amount of fat, 5%, would give you the flavor impact. And then you're going to have a better hybrid product of a plant-based product versus with some fat versus just a plant-based. So this is supposed to be a good minimum viable product because it's got a very small element of cultivated element, but maybe the impact is for a consumer to say, wow, actually that's better, okay? But then you have a company like Good Meat, which was one of the first ones to get regulated in Singapore, and they launched 2 weeks ago a product with 3% cultivated element, which is non-differentiated, so basically cell bio of chicken fibroblasts. And I wonder, are we doing the same mistake again by creating consumer expectations, you know, positioning it like meat, it looks like a hamburger, it is sold in the butcher, you know, frozen shelves, for them to try it and then say, what's the difference? I mean, it's exactly like the plant-based products, which I may like or may not like. And I think that's a big danger that we need to be very careful on manage expectations. On one hand, we have to bring a minimum viable product, but on the other hand, don't get consumers to leave those products and come back in 15 years.
Yeah, which we've already seen happen in the blended meat category. In the US, we had Tyson and Purdue. Here, I think it's Tesco, Aldi, all rolled out blended options, which were, you know, traditional slaughtered meat with plant-based components, and sales were lackluster for all of those products. I mean, so much so that Tyson dropped their blended product and transitioned that name, Raised and Rooted, into a completely plant-based option. Purdue has pivoted their marketing to just kids to kind of try and talk about the benefits of, you know, eating more vegetables and trying to get, you know, a way for parents who have very picky eaters to sneak vegetables into their chicken nuggets. So, I mean, aside from pivoting to marketing, you know, to parents that are trying to get their kids to eat more veggies, you know, the industry has claimed that the consumer wasn't really ready for these products. So what can we learn from that experience? And do you think that the problem for the blended category, which we're kind of trying to base the entry of hybrid with, do you think that it really wasn't, that the consumer just wasn't ready?
Yeah, so I think, again, it was creating expectations. I'm vegan for like 11 years, and when the first products came out, it was kind of like a bean mush, you know, it looked like a hamburger, but it was always a big disappointment. And then you had those impossible products coming out, or Beyond Meat, which was like a big leap, and it was a very strong aroma of the pea protein, but still, you know, it was nice, and 16% of fat, kind of to cover it all up, so it made sense, but still, whenever I try new products, hoping for something to get in, it's always a big disappointment. So why do we continue to package them and position them and market them as alternatives or like analogs of meat? We are still far from that. For me, just buying tofu and, you know, cooking it in a Thai curry, it's much better. So I think the industry is to blame for taking few steps too fast and positioning the products, but that's the marketing guys. But the technology guys are still behind, and I'm sure we can collaborate. I mean, some companies that really care about the product quality, I can mention Mosamit, one of our customers, they will not go out with a muscle product until it's a real muscle product. So they choose and go with fat because that's a product they can bring to market, which is a real product. And I think, again, that's not for us to try and fool the consumers, because nothing can beat your taste. You'll immediately know if this is a worthwhile product or not, and we should try and be careful about that.
So I want to just kind of talk about the idea of speaking to the consumer. You know, we've seen sort of surveys of consumer preferences that indicate that conventional meat products are tastier compared to alternative or plant-based options, and that includes blended products. We've seen some of these surveys done. So how do you feel like the hybrid products will win consumers where blended products have failed? And how does the customer perception need to be tantamount in us speaking about how these products, you know, either convey benefits, or how can we as an industry talk about them more effectively? Katharina, do you want to start?
Sure. Maybe I can first also add a couple of sentences onto the question with the blended products and why they failed, and my point of view on what I've seen from the ingredient industry. Well, they brought these products onto the market claiming names like half and half, 50-50, writing less meat, more veggies. So imagine, what's the point? You're standing in front of the shelf and ask yourself, okay, but why should I buy it? At least I would. If I would eat meat, I would ask myself, why should I buy this right now? I could also buy my meat and buy my veggies. Why should I mix it? So it's about communicating benefits, which has not been done. And it's important to know that meat is something which is for many people something very important in their diet, something cultural influenced and so on. So if you reduce the meat content, it's dangerous because it can be something like a lower quality product in the end. And if you have the same price for this, as have been done in most cases, as far as I know, there is again the question, why should I pay the same price if I get 50% veggies instead, which are cheaper than meat? So I think there were quite a lot of mistakes done, which we can learn now from, or we should learn with hybrid products, especially about the price positioning. So I think hybrid products with cultivated cells have, or also with precision fermented ingredients, we should mention, have their own challenges and their own chances, you can say. So the challenge is definitely, again, something about the pricing. We're quite expensive, and then we hear like products with 3% cultivated cells. I've read this and I thought like, okay, that sounds like a marketing gag now, and hopefully they don't fail as consumers expect this to taste different. I don't know, you go in there and have specific expectation. It should taste different than a plant-based product, right? That's the whole purpose of it. So this is a bit tricky, you can say, but hybrid products give also a specific chance. At least during my PhD, we've done a study, for example, looking onto factors influencing the willingness to buy cultivated meat. You can also transfer this to hybrid products most likely. We've checked whether it has an influence, who's producing cultivated meat and what kind of factors are influencing. And we found that this excitement factor, which people perceive when getting information about cultivated meat, is a very strong influencer regarding the acceptance or the willingness to buy. So it's a lot about excitement, and excitement is influencing the first purchasing decision. But important is that this excitement is, well, you can say fulfilled, so that in the end you are not disappointed from what you see. So one of the biggest challenges is to get the right taste and texture of these products, and you should not go onto the market before the taste and texture is at least good. It should like taste the same or better, and have at least the same price or be even cheaper. Because it's, from a consumer perspective, why should you buy this product? I could also buy my meat, for example. For most people, it's not about sustainability, even if you see this in consumer surveys. In the end, this is not the main purchasing driver. So even if you write it has less greenhouse gas emissions and so on, that's good, that's important. But in the end, there should be more personal benefits, which, according to studies, influence this way more.
So does anybody on this panel have an opinion about how we rectify this problem within the cultivated industry, that we are trying to get a product to market that is meeting consumers' demand for low price, but also meeting consumers' demands for superior products that are not just plant-based? How do we get those products to market? Because I mean, that seems to be the question that we're grappling with, right? We need products to perform, but we also need to meet on price. Like, what is the answer? Is it get the price lower so that people just try them? Or is it we wait until we have a superior product to deliver to consumers?
I think you got to like make it taste great and then get it into people's hands so they can taste it. And then you need to make enough of it. And that's the big challenge, and obviously driving down cost as well. because if you don't do that, then we don't have a market to sell.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. And I would also say that hitting the right type of ingredient to set forth with in the market, meaning that it has the nutritional value, it could take on different personalities in different products, and that it meets the functionality requirement that it is supposed to perform in the food product that, for example, myoglobins and burger patties, lactoferrins and milk, ovalbumins or powder and baking products, right? So getting that science right, getting the functionality correct, knowing how to scale, and knowing how to bring the cost of goods down with the right start substrates, because if you're going to convert pure glucose into microbially into these ingredients and precision fermentation again, then there has to be a price point parity, because converting glucose to other proteins is good, but then glucose is always going to be expensive at the end of the day. So we need to understand the conversions, the scale that we can operate at, and also the functionality has to be spot on. Nutritive value, yes. If we don't have the right blends, the easier way to market it, and I completely agree with Guy over here, it's easier to sell it as not the alternative of something, but to sell it for its nutritive value from my perspective.
I'll try to think like a consumer, and there's two products I would go for. The first one is a product that has superior protein over the plant-based alternatives. So you have, for the plant-based, you have soy, you have pea, and maybe chickpea. And I'm putting aside fermentation for a moment. Then with the right cultivation, you can actually get a higher quality and protein profile, which is as similar to identical to the essential 8 that you need to have. And obviously, muscle gives you that, but that's my personal agenda. And then the other thing is, so the first thing is a product that has better protein. Go for the health angle, maybe sell it as an isolate, go for premium markets, and use the advantage. I don't think we can make the price point yet. And the second approach is flavor. I would go for the fat / plant-based protein hybrid, where hopefully the different fat that we do see companies being more successful in producing in higher scale will actually give the benefit of the aroma, of the different effects that you expect to get.
I would say one more. It's got to be cool. Like, I want to be excited to eat it, and that's why, I mean, Vow, the Australian cultivated meat company, it's a bit Marmite, you either love it or hate it, but like, I really want to try their stuff. I want to try the mammoth meatball, I want to like try stuff that I've never heard of before, and yes, all the nutritional stuff and cost is important, but yeah, I want it.
But I think, we saw Impossible in the United States do that. They launched very limited release into restaurants and made sure that the consumer had a really incredible experience with that. And then they went out, to a broader market, right? Yep. So, we saw that Dominic Crenn had a few of the upside chicken, and there was a waiting list, and you had to apply to get into a tasting and things like that. So I think that there are things that we've done as an industry that have moved in the right direction. But I think what I'm hearing from all of you is that we're not necessarily meeting the expectation, or we as an industry are not eloquently explaining to the consumer what they should expect from these products when they first experience them. So I think, sorry, did you go ahead?
Sorry, I just wanted to also mention that at some point as a whole, we need to evaluate what the right kind of technology is for producing a certain set of ingredients. There's plant-based that could go towards dairy and cheese. There's mycelium that can go towards meats, but also cell-cultured, which can go towards meats. There's also the idea of producing specific dairy ingredients through cultured mammary glands. So fragmenting this industry is also sort of diluting resources towards achieving a final goal, which is getting into the consumer market. At some point, we would probably need to think about how we want to approach these categories appropriately.
Yeah, and I think the funding landscape is forcing people to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, we have to consolidate
Yes.
around platform technologies, or else we'll get nothing to market, right? And now the financing isn't there for everyone to build their own plant. You know, $400 million isn't going to be used for something like that anymore. And I think it's ultimately good for the industry to be more resourceful.
So we have just about 6 minutes left. I have more questions for them, but if anybody in the audience has questions for this panel, we'd love to hear what you have to say. I've been told there's a microphone, so. Sure.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to ask about the initial topic that you opened the conversation with, which was education. So about really who needs to educate consumers and how in these hybrid products that they're going to have plant-based. So at the end of the day, we are facing the same challenges, right? That whether they will have cultivated material in them, there's still this plant-based factor to them. So in my experience, I feel that sometimes we're battling against over 100 years of food science research and nutrition research that started with animal products. Like the very first studies in food science were based in whey and egg protein and of course meat. And as many people in this room have been engaged with policymakers and professor level academics in high institutions that come from other fields. And when I was working in cultivated meat, they would say, oh, but you eat plant-based, you're not healthy, you can't be healthy. And so sometimes I feel that, we need more open research, or we need at least more academic research that helps us back this plant-based nutrition validity that is affecting hybrid here. So my questions for the panel is, how can we as an ecosystem and the people that are working in hybrid and the people that are working in cultivated meat development help really for this open research or academic research backing nutrition claims work?
No, I think it's a fair question, and I think some of this is being addressed by, some of it, not all, some of it is being addressed through government setting up consortia from the food security viewpoint, which then will seep into mainstream because there's government backing. But in most cases, there are still open exchange forums like the Good Food Institute, Food Tech Congress, for example, Future Food Tech. I mean, these food areas where the large CPGs come together and talk about where the market is going. But how do you educate the consumer is really the question. And I'm no marketing person, but I can say that this is where people who hold positions of high prominence would ideally need to try the products themselves and then speak about it, or actually have people try the foods in markets and then choose for themselves. But it's never actually going to hit that point if we say that, oh, here's an alt meatball. I'm not going to pick that unless I know that that's okay for me. Would I feed it to my 5-year-old? Maybe, because I'm a scientist. But if it were someone else's child, maybe not. I might get sued in the US, right? So this is, I think it has to be with regulatory approval. It has to also be with leaders of prominence who take the big step and say that, hey, I'm going to do this because I think I believe in it. But we all have to do it individually.
Yeah, good point. Maybe just to add on this, the government definitely has an important role, and coming from Europe, or especially from Germany, which is relatively conservative, maybe not as conservative as Italy or some countries in Europe, but still, there have been a limited amount of investments. But a couple of months ago, actually, my PhD supervisor and the team got a grant from the German government, or the government of Lower Saxony. They are working now in a larger consortium with consumers as well. So they are looking onto different stages. So they have, for example, done focus group discussions about cultivated fish, and hearing then what are people actually afraid of, what do they think of it, and all of this needs to go also in the development and in the communication, because in the end it's about informing consumers in a proper way that they understand what you tell them, and you should not tell too much technical details, as this is also not usually not very how can you say attractive. It's more people are afraid of this, but to make something or to explain it to something that is more familiar to them, like brewing beer, for example, precision fermentation and brewing beer, this kind of similarities. So there are some first steps going into this direction, and I think that's an important way to start, but it's definitely not enough, and you should have this in actually like every country who's dealing with this, because there are also cultural influences and so on. So what we do in one country cannot easily be transferred to another.
I think, first of all, the industry needs to be honest with the messages that it delivers. We touched on that before. And within the industry, I see more and more openness and inclination to collaborate and share data between the different companies. In the beginning, that's only 3 years ago, but when the funding was very high, many of the companies thought that they can solve the problem as a silo. So they do everything, starting from the cell line development all the way to process development and building their own factories. And now I think because the funding doesn't allow you to do everything, you understand that you need to collaborate, and sharing data with the industry and as a result also with the community, I think would be very helpful. And the academia, we work a lot with academia. We provide them with our supplements. We support them in the research. And hopefully 2, 3, 4 years down the road, we will be an integral part of any protocol to grow meat. So I think openness of the industry and towards the community is important.
And with that, we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us till almost the end of the day.